You are the last major dictatorship, the last major communist dictatorship in the world.
You mean I'm dictatorship?
Well, of course. A developmental dictatorship is what we believe it is. Am I wrong?
Of course. This is big mistake.
Big mistake.
Of course.
This shows you don't know China that well.
Oh, I don't know China that well. I've been here half a dozen times.
我想要问你问题 What means dictatorship?
Dictatorship? When you do not have freedom of the press. And there is not freedom of the press here. There is not. That's a perfect example.
You mean China, there's not...
Here, in China, yes.
China.
We see a connection between freedom of the people and freedom of the press. You have said the press should be the mouthpiece of the party. You've also said, as Mao Zedong did, newspapers must be run by politicians. What do you fear from a free press?
I think for any individual country or any individual party, they always have their own publications to promote their own ideology. As I explained to you, the Chinese system is a multi-party system led by the Communist Party. And we do have freedom of the press. We have over 2,000 TV stations in the country. We have more than 2,000 local newspapers and more than 8,000 magazines. We publish more than 100,000 new books each year.
Question about dictatorship.
That's right.
You bring up the internet. You have blocked internet sites here in China. The BBC, the Washington Post. Why? Why block an internet site? You don't trust the people somehow to be able to pick stuff up off the internet and learn?
Well, about this internet, I think we discussed this issue before when we were talking about freedom of the press. We hope that we can learn a lot of useful things and useful information from the internet. However, sometimes there is also unhealthy stuff, especially pornography on the internet, which does great harm to our youngsters.
Not from the BBC and not from the Washington Post.
As for examples you have given, such as BBC and the others, they might be banned because of some of their political news reports. We need to be selective. We hope to restrict as much as possible information not conducive to China's development.
One last question. Dictatorship. You know what? When I see the picture of that one young man in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square, that to me means Chinese dictatorship. That's a wonderful symbol that hits me in my heart about dictatorship in China.
Don't need translation. I know what you say.
I'm very willing to answer these questions because Barbara Walters of ABC had asked me the same question about 10 years ago and gave me a photo. And I said this young man was not arrested and did not get hurt because the tank stopped in front of him and refused to crush him. And Barbara also gave me the name of who she believed was the young man, although I may have forgotten a specific name. But I asked people who were working with the public security agencies to use all of their networks to check out the whereabouts of that young man. And after a month-long investigation, I could say for sure that this young man has not been arrested.
Did a part of you admire his courage?
In fact, I've never met this young man, although we're trying to search out his whereabouts. But we do know that he was never arrested. I do not know where he lives now in China, but looking from the picture, I know he definitely had his own ideas. But whether his ideas were correct ones, that's an entirely different question. I cannot tell for sure who and what had influenced him.
You haven't answered the question, Mr. President. Did a part of Jiang Zemin admire his courage?
Well, I know what you're driving at. But what I want to emphasize is that we fully respect people's rights to freely express their wishes and desires. But I do not favor any flagrant opposition to the government's measures during an extraordinary situation. The tank stopped and did not run over the young man.
I'm not talking about the tank. I'm talking about that man's heart, that man's courage, that man, that lonely man, standing against that. You were a student protester back in the Shanghai days.
刚才我的同行提到关于人权的问题，胡主席还没有回答这个问题呢，是不是想回答呢？
我和奥巴马总统已经有8次会晤，每次会晤啊，我们都就共同关心的以及各自关注的问题进行了深入交流，坦诚的交换意见，其中也包括人权问题。中国始终致力于保护和促进人权，中国的人权事业取得了举世公认的显著成就。中国承认并在尊重人权的普遍性原则，但同时我们也认为，人权的普遍性原则必须与各国的国情相结合。
President Xi, why do you think members of the British public should be pleased to do more business with a country that is not democratic, is not transparent, and has a deeply, deeply troubling attitude towards human rights?
关于这个记者提到的人权问题，中国高度重视人权的保障工作，我们坚持把人权的普遍性原则和中国的实际相结合，走出了一条适合中国国情的人权的发展道路。人权保障啊，就全世界来讲，没有最好，只有更好。任何国家都需要不断加强和改进人权工作，以适应时代的发展和人民的需要。而在人权问题上，我想最大的发言权还是各自所在国的绝大多数人民。